The town of Ravens Hollow had always been shrouded in an air of mystery. Nestled between dense, ancient forests and a misty lake, it was the kind of place where the past never truly let go. For years, the old fairground on the outskirts of town had lain in ruin, its colorful banners faded and tattered, and its once lively attractions reduced to rusted, silent specters of their former glory. But tonight, everything had changed. News had spread like wildfire through the town. The fairground was reopening. No one knew who had taken on the monumental task of restoring it, but the allure of nostalgia and the promise of forgotten delights drew the townspeople in droves. Emma Lawrence, a 16-year-old with an insatiable curiosity, walked towards the fairground with her friends, Sarah and Mark. The trio had grown up hearing stories about the tragic accident that had shuttered the fairground 20 years ago. They had heard whispers of a devastating fire that had claimed the lives of several visitors, including a little boy named Tommy. As they approached the entrance, the evening sky darkened, and a cold breeze rustled the trees. The wind seemed to carry with it faint echoes of laughter and the distant strains of carnival music. Emma shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah and Mark paused, straining to listen. Mark shrugged. "It's just the wind. Come on, let's check it out before it gets too crowded." They passed through the grand archway, now freshly painted and festooned with twinkling lights. The fairground buzzed with excitement, the air thick with the scent of popcorn and cotton candy. Yet, despite the lively atmosphere, there was an undercurrent of unease that Emma couldn't shake. Their first stop was the carousel. It was beautifully restored, its intricately carved horses gleaming under the bright lights. Emma's eyes were drawn to one horse in particular, a majestic black stallion with fiery red eyes. As she approached it, she felt a strange pull, as if the horse itself was beckoning her to ride. "Emma, over here!" Sarah called, breaking the spell. Emma shook her head, trying to dispel the odd sensation, and joined her friends on the ride. The carousel began to spin, its hauntingly beautiful melody filling the air. Emma closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. But as the ride picked up speed, the music distorted, becoming a discordant, nightmarish tune. Emma's eyes snapped open and she gasped. The fairground around her had changed. The vibrant lights had dimmed, casting eerie shadows, and the cheerful laughter of visitors had turned into mournful wails. She looked at her friends, but they were no longer there. Instead, the carousel was filled with ghostly figures, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and sorrow. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The black stallion beneath her seemed to come alive, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. She felt an icy hand grasp her shoulder, and she turned to see a small boy standing beside her. His clothes were scorched and tattered, his eyes hollow and filled with despair. "Help me," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of the distorted music. Emma's vision blurred, and darkness encroached on the edges of her sight. Just as she felt herself slipping away, the carousel slowed to a stop, and the fairground returned to its bustling, cheerful state. She found herself back with Sarah and Mark, who were laughing and chatting as if nothing had happened. "Emma, are you okay?" Sarah asked, noticing her pale face. Emma nodded weakly, her mind reeling. She glanced back at the black stallion, but it was just a wooden horse once more. The boy was gone, but his haunting plea echoed in her mind. "Help me." As they moved on to the next attraction, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the fairground held secrets far darker than anyone could imagine, and she knew she had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The night deepened as Emma, Sarah, and Mark wandered further into the fairground. The festive lights seemed brighter, the laughter of children more infectious. But Emma couldn't shake the eerie experience on the carousel. She kept her unease to herself, not wanting to dampen her friend's excitement. As they approached the game stalls, the air filled with the sounds of clinking bells and joyful shouts. Emma tried to immerse herself in the fun, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the boy on the carousel, his scorched clothes, and his desperate plea for help. "Hey, Em, check this out." Mark's voice jolted her from her thoughts. He stood in front of a ring toss game, a triumphant grin on his face. "I just won you a prize." He handed her a small stuffed clown, its painted smile wide and unsettling. Emma forced a smile, taking the toy. "Thanks, Mark." They continued through the fairground, stopping at various stalls and rides. Despite her best efforts, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every so often she caught glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of her eye, but when she turned to look, there was nothing there. The trio eventually found themselves in front of a large tent adorned with colorful banners. The sign above the entrance read, "The Laughing Clown, Fun for All Ages." "Let's go in," Sarah suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Emma hesitated, but Sarah and Mark were already heading inside. With a deep breath, she followed them. The interior of the tent was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from flickering bulbs that cast eerie shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of old fabric and popcorn. In the center of the tent stood a mechanical clown, its garish face painted with a wide red smile. It rocked back and forth, emitting a continuous, eerie laugh. "That's creepy," Sarah said, though she was clearly more amused than frightened. As they walked further into the tent, Emma's unease grew. The laughter of the mechanical clown seemed to follow them, growing louder and more distorted with each step. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching their every move. Suddenly, the laughter stopped, plunging the tent into an oppressive silence. Emma's heart raced as she looked around, trying to find the source of the unsettling quiet. "Did you hear that?" Mark whispered, his voice barely audible. Emma nodded, her eyes darting around the tent. The shadows seemed to shift and move, and she could swear she heard faint whispers mingling with the silence. "Let's get out of here," she urged, her voice trembling. They turned to leave, but the entrance was no longer there. In its place was a solid wall of fabric sealing them inside. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. "What's going on?" Sarah cried, her eyes wide with fear. Before Emma could respond, the mechanical clown sprang to life once more, its laughter echoing through the tent. But this time, it was joined by other voices, ghostly and disembodied, laughing and whispering in an unintelligible chorus. The shadows around them grew darker and more defined, taking on human shapes. Emma could see the outlines of people, their faces twisted in expressions of torment and agony. Among them was the small boy from the carousel, his eyes pleading for help. "Why are you here?" a voice hissed, sending chills down Emma's spine. "We just wanted to have fun," Mark stammered, his bravado evaporating. "Fun?" the voice mocked, dripping with malice. "This place is cursed, and you are its next victims." The ghostly figures closed in, their laughter growing louder and more menacing. Emma could feel their cold breath on her skin, their icy fingers brushing against her. She fought to stay calm, desperately searching for a way out. "There's got to be an exit," she said, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of laughter. They stumbled through the tent, pushing past the ghostly apparitions. Finally, they found a small opening at the back and burst through it, emerging into the open air. The fairground was still bustling with activity, the cheerful sounds of carnival games and laughter filling the night. But to Emma, everything felt wrong. The echoes of the laughter from the tent still rang in her ears, a chilling reminder of the horrors they had just escaped. "We need to leave," she said urgently, her eyes scanning the fairground for any signs of danger. Sarah and Mark nodded. their faces pale and shaken. As they hurried toward the exit, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the fairground held even darker secrets, and the ghosts of the past were not finished with them yet. Emma, Sarah, and Mark barely managed to escape the laughing clown tent, with their nerves intact. The cheerful sounds of the fairground seemed to mock their terror. As they regrouped near a popcorn stand, Emma felt a persistent tugging at her consciousness, drawing her eyes back to the carousel they had first ridden. "Why do you keep looking at that thing?" Mark asked, following her gaze. Emma shook her head. "There's something about it. I saw something when I was on it." Sarah frowned. "You mean the boy?" Emma nodded. "He was there, asking for help. I think he's connected to the accident." Sarah and Mark exchanged uneasy glances but nodded. "Let's check it out again," Mark suggested, trying to sound brave. They walked back to the carousel, its once joyful music now an ominous lullaby in Emma's ears. The black stallion with its fiery red eyes seemed to stare directly at her. She hesitated but mounted the horse again, feeling the same strange pull as before. As the carousel began to spin, Emma braced herself. The cheerful lights dimmed and the air grew colder. She felt a rush of vertigo as the world around her transformed. The vibrant fairground faded into a shadowy, ghostly version of itself. This time, Sarah and Mark seemed to be caught in the same vision. They clung to their horses, eyes wide with fear. Ghostly figures appeared around them, reliving the moments before the tragedy struck. Emma saw the boy again, standing by the edge of the carousel. His eyes met hers, filled with sorrow and desperation. "You have to help us," he whispered, his voice echoing in the unnatural stillness. "How?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "Find the ringmaster. He knows the truth," the boy replied before his form flickered and faded. The vision intensified, showing flashes of the accident, a fire raging through the fairground, screams of terror, and the crumbling remains of once thriving attractions. Emma's heart pounded as she saw the boy trapped in the flames, reaching out for someone to save him. The carousel jerked to a stop, jolting Emma back to reality. She was breathless and drenched in sweat, her hands gripping the reins tightly. Sarah and Mark were equally shaken. "Did you see it?" Emma asked, looking at her friends. Sarah nodded, her face pale. "The fire. The boy. It was real." Mark swallowed hard. "We need to find the ringmaster." They dismounted the carousel and began their search. The fairground, with its cheerful facade, now felt like a labyrinth of horrors. Every corner seemed to hide a ghostly presence, watching them with hollow eyes. As they wandered, Emma's mind raced. The boy's plea for help haunted her. She felt an inexplicable connection to him, as if their fates were intertwined. The ringmaster held the key to unraveling the mystery, but finding him in the sprawling fairground seemed an impossible task. They approached an old man operating the Ferris wheel. His weathered face and tired eyes suggested he had seen more than he let on. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "Excuse me, sir? Do you know where we can find the ringmaster?" The old man glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "The ringmaster? He doesn't show himself often. But if you're looking for answers, try the Hall of Mirrors. It's where he keeps his secrets." Emma thanked him and they made their way to the Hall of Mirrors. The entrance loomed ahead, its garish exterior reflecting the distorted faces of passers-by. Emma took a deep breath and stepped inside, her friends close behind. The Hall of Mirrors was a labyrinth of reflections, each one twisting and warping their images. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional echo of their footsteps. Emma felt a growing sense of dread as they ventured deeper, the mirrors revealing more than just their reflections. In one mirror, Emma saw the fairground in flames, the ghostly figures of the victims trapped within. In another, she saw the ringmaster, a sinister smile on his face as he orchestrated the chaos. The images were disorienting, blurring the line between reality and illusion. "Look," Sarah pointed to a mirror at the far end of the hall. Unlike the others, it was clear and undistorted, showing a pristine reflection of a young boy in old-fashioned clothes. The boy from the carousel. Emma approached the mirror, her heart pounding. The boy's reflection stared back at her, his eyes filled with a silent plea. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold glass. "Please," the boy's voice echoed in her mind. "Find the ringmaster. Free us." Emma nodded, determination stealing her resolve. They would find the ringmaster and uncover the truth behind the Fairground's tragic past. Only then could they hope to free the spirits trapped in this nightmarish place. As they left the Hall of Mirrors, the echoes of laughter followed them, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lay ahead. The Fairground's secrets were beginning to unravel, and Emma knew they were only at the beginning of a journey that would test their courage and sanity. The Fairground, once a place of joy, had become a battleground between the living and the dead, and the stakes were higher than they could have ever imagined. The path to the ringmaster was anything but straightforward. Emma, Sarah, and Mark left the Hall of Mirrors with a sense of urgency, the boys' plea for help echoing in their minds. The Fairground had taken on a darker, more sinister atmosphere. Even the bright lights and cheerful music couldn't mask the underlying sense of dread that permeated the air. Their next stop was the Midway, where games and attractions beckoned visitors with the promise of fun and prizes. Among the crowd, a particularly garish clown caught Emma's eye. His costume was vibrant, his makeup grotesquely exaggerated, but it was his eyes that unnerved her the most. They were cold, calculating, and far too aware. As they walked past, the clown's gaze followed them. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "Did you see that clown?" she asked, her voice low. Sarah nodded. "Yeah, he's creepy. Let's just keep moving." Mark, ever the skeptic, rolled his eyes. "It's just a guy in makeup trying to scare us. Don't let it get to you." But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the clown was more than just a performer. As they moved deeper into the Midway, the sounds of the Fairground seemed to fade, replaced by an oppressive silence. She glanced back and saw the clown standing still, watching them with an intensity that made her skin crawl. They came to a game stall adorned with colorful balloons. "Let's take a break," Mark suggested, trying to lighten the mood. "How about a game?" Reluctantly, Emma and Sarah agreed. Mark handed over a few dollars and was given 3 darts. He took aim and popped a balloon, winning a small stuffed animal. He turned to Emma, smiling. "See? Nothing to be afraid of." But before Emma could respond, the lights around them flickered, and the temperature seemed to drop. The clown appeared beside them, his sudden presence making Emma jump. "Congratulations," the clown said in a voice that was both cheerful and menacing. "Care to try again?" Mark hesitated, but the clown's unsettling grin seemed to dare him. "Sure," he said, taking the darts. As he aimed, the clown leaned closer to Emma, his breath cold against her ear. "Do you believe in ghosts?" he whispered. Emma's heart pounded. She turned to face him, but his expression was unreadable behind the thick makeup. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. The clown's smile widened. "Just a bit of fun," he said. "But be careful. Not everything here is what it seems." With that, he turned and vanished into the crowd. Mark missed his next dart, his concentration broken. "That guy is seriously creepy," he muttered. Emma couldn't agree more. They continued through the Midway, but the atmosphere had changed. The festive lights seemed to cast deeper shadows, and the laughter of the crowd had a hollow, mocking edge. Suddenly, the clown reappeared, blocking their path. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his tone playful but threatening. Mark stepped forward. "What's your problem, man? We're just trying to enjoy the fair." The clown's smile never faltered. "Oh, but I am the problem," he said, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "And I have a score to settle." Before they could react, the clown lunged at them, his hands, cold and strong, wrapped around Emma's wrist. She screamed, struggling to break free, but his grip was like iron. Sarah and Mark tried to intervene, but the clown was unnaturally strong. With a powerful shove, he sent them sprawling to the ground. Emma's mind raced. She remembered the boy's words, "Find the ringmaster." Somehow, she knew this clown was connected to the tragedy. "Why are you doing this?" she cried, desperation in her voice. The clown's eyes glittered with malice. "Revenge," he hissed, "for what was taken from me. And you're going to help me get it back." Emma struggled harder, her fear giving her strength. She managed to twist out of his grip and ran, shouting for Sarah and Mark to follow. They sprinted through the fairground, the clown's mocking laughter echoing behind them. They ducked into a narrow alley between two stalls, panting and terrified. "We need to find the ringmaster," Emma said, her voice shaking. "He's the only one who can stop this." Sarah nodded, her face pale. "But where do we start?" A voice from the shadows made them jump. "I can help." They turned to see the old man from the Ferris wheel, his expression grave. "The ringmaster's tent is hidden," he said. "But there's a way to find it. Follow the path of the forgotten." Emma's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" The old man gestured to a narrow, overgrown path that led away from the main fairground. "That path will take you to the places that time has forgotten. The ringmaster's secrets are there." With no other options, they followed the path, the sounds of the fairground fading behind them. The journey was fraught with eerie silences and ghostly whispers, but they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth and put an end to the horrors of the ghostly fairground. As they walked, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the clown was still watching, waiting for his chance to strike again. The path of the forgotten was just the beginning, and she knew they were in for a fight against forces far more sinister than they could have ever imagined. The narrow, overgrown path led them deeper into the forgotten parts of the fairground, where the lights and sounds of the midway faded into an eerie silence. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Emma, Sarah, and Mark pressed on, their determination fueled by fear and the desperate need to uncover the truth. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a dilapidated building barely visible through the overgrown foliage. A weathered sign hung above the entrance, its faded letters spelling out "Hall of Mirrors." The building seemed to pulse with a dark energy, as if it were a living entity waiting to consume them. "This place gives me the creeps," Mark muttered, his voice barely audible. Emma nodded. "We have to go in. The ringmaster's secrets are in there." Taking a deep breath, they stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from flickering bulbs that cast long, distorted shadows. The walls were lined with mirrors of all shapes and sizes, each one reflecting their terrified faces back at them, but something was wrong. The reflections seemed to twist and warp, creating a nightmarish labyrinth of shifting images. "Stay close," Emma whispered, her heart pounding. "We can't get separated." They moved cautiously through the maze of mirrors, their footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. As they ventured deeper, the reflections began to change. Instead of showing their own faces, the mirrors displayed scenes of the past, children laughing and playing, families enjoying the fairground, and then the tragic fire that had claimed so many lives. Emma stopped in front of a particularly large mirror, its surface rippling like water. She saw the boy from the carousel standing amidst the flames, his eyes filled with terror. "Help us," he mouthed, his voice a haunting whisper in her mind. "We have to keep moving." Sarah urged, pulling Emma away from the mirror. They continued through the maze, but the mirrors grew more sinister. They showed grotesque images of the victims, their faces twisted in agony and despair. The air grew colder, and Emma could feel the presence of the spirits around them, their anguish palpable. Finally, they reached the center of the maze, where a grand mirror stood, larger and more ornate than the others. Its surface was smooth and dark, reflecting nothing but an empty void. Emma stepped closer, her reflection slowly appearing, but it was not her own. It was the ringmaster. His face was gaunt and hollow, his eyes burning with a malevolent fire. "Welcome," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "I've been expecting you." Emma's heart raced. "Who are you? What do you want?" The ringmaster's reflection sneered. "I am the guardian of this fairground, and you have trespassed into my domain. The spirits here are bound by my will, and you are now part of my collection." Mark stepped forward, his fists clenched. "We're not afraid of you. We're going to stop you." The ringmaster laughed, a sound that sent chills down their spines. "Brave words, but you have no idea what you're up against. This place is my creation, a prison for the souls who perished here. And now, you will join them." The mirrors around them began to shimmer and warp, the reflections transforming into ghostly figures. The spirits of the victims surrounded them, their eyes filled with sorrow and rage. Emma felt a surge of determination. "We're here to free the spirits, to break the curse." The ringmaster's reflection glared at her. "You think you can defeat me? You are nothing but pawns in my game." Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing. "We have to find a way to break his hold on the fairground." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the ringmaster's reflection. "There must be something here, a clue or a weakness we can exploit." Mark looked around, his gaze falling on a small, ornate box at the base of the grand mirror. "What about that?" Emma knelt down and opened the box. Inside was a delicate antique key. "This must be it," she said, holding up the key. "We have to find the lock it opens." The ringmaster's reflection snarled, his image flickering with rage. "You will never escape. This place will be your tomb." Ignoring his threats, they turned and made their way back through the maze, the key clutched tightly in Emma's hand. The mirrors continued to twist and warp, but they pushed on, driven by a newfound determination. As they reached the exit, the air grew colder, and the ghostly figures closed in around them. Emma could feel their icy breath on her skin, their mournful whispers filling her ears. "We're almost there," she urged, her voice trembling. "Just a little further." Finally, they burst through the exit and into the night air. The fairground seemed eerily quiet, the vibrant lights and cheerful sounds muted. They stood in the shadow of the grand mirror, the key glinting in the dim light. Emma looked around, her eyes scanning the fairground for any sign of the lock. "Where do we go now?" A voice from the shadows made them turn. The old man from the Ferris wheel stood there, his expression solemn. "Follow me," he said, his voice a low whisper. "I know where the lock is." They followed him through the darkened fairground, their hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. The path led them to a hidden alcove behind the Ferris wheel, where an old, ornate door stood. Emma stepped forward and inserted the key into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, winding staircase. "This is it," she said, her voice filled with determination. "This is where we break the curse." As they descended into the darkness, the echoes of laughter and cries of the fairground followed them, a haunting reminder of the horrors they had faced. The path to the ringmaster's secrets was fraught with danger, but they knew they had to press on. The fate of the fairground, and the spirits trapped within, depended on their courage and resolve. And in the depths of the forgotten fairground, they would confront the true evil that lay at its heart. The staircase seemed to spiral endlessly into the darkness, each step echoing ominously. Emma, Sarah, Mark, and the old man descended cautiously, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint, distant whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. At the bottom of the stairs, they emerged into a dimly lit corridor lined with faded posters advertising the fairground's attractions from years past. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if guiding them toward their destination. The old man led the way, his expression grim and determined. "This way," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The funhouse of horrors is just ahead." The corridor opened into a large, decrepit room filled with dusty, broken props and rotting wooden structures. In the center stood the entrance to the funhouse of horrors, its once bright colors now faded and peeling. The doorway yawned like a gaping maw, exuding an air of malevolence. Emma glanced at her friends, their faces pale with fear, but resolute. "We have to go in. The ringmaster's secrets are in there." They stepped into the funhouse, the door creaking shut behind them with a finality that sent chills down their spines. The interior was a maze of twisted corridors and distorted mirrors, designed to disorient and terrify. The air was thick with the smell of decay and the faint, ghostly whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. As they ventured deeper, the funhouse came to life. Ghostly figures appeared in the mirrors, their eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. The walls seemed to close in, the corridors narrowing and twisting in impossible ways. The whispers grew louder, forming a haunting chorus of voices that echoed through the funhouse. "Help us," they pleaded. "Free us from this nightmare." Emma's heart pounded as they navigated the labyrinthine passages. The funhouse seemed to shift and change, creating new paths and dead ends at every turn. The ghostly figures followed them, their presence a constant reminder of the fairground's tragic past. They reached a large circular room filled with grotesque, lifelike mannequins posed in various states of terror. In the center stood a tall, ornate mirror, its surface rippling like water. Emma approached it cautiously, feeling a strange pull toward its reflective depths. As she looked into the mirror, the image of the ringmaster appeared, his eyes burning with a malevolent fire. "You cannot escape," he hissed, his voice echoing through the funhouse. "This place is my domain, and you are my prisoners." Emma stepped back, her heart racing. "We have to find the source of his power," she said, her voice trembling. "There must be something here that we can use to break his hold on the fairground." Sarah and Mark nodded, their faces filled with determination. They searched the room, examining the mannequins and the mirrors for any clues. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, guiding them toward a hidden door at the back of the room. They opened the door to reveal a small, dimly lit chamber. In the center stood a pedestal with an old ornate book bound in leather. The air around it crackled with dark energy, and the whispers seemed to converge on the book, their voices a haunting symphony of despair. "This must be it," Emma said, approaching the pedestal. "The source of his power." As she reached for the book, the funhouse seemed to come alive. The walls trembled, the ghostly figures in the mirrors screaming in agony. The ringmaster's image appeared in every reflective surface, his eyes blazing with fury. "You will not take my power," he roared, his voice shaking the funhouse. "You will join the others in eternal torment." Emma grabbed the book, feeling its dark energy surge through her. She opened it to find pages filled with ancient cryptic symbols. The whispers guided her hands, helping her find the spell that would break the curse. "Quick, help me read this," she urged, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of screams and whispers. Sarah and Mark joined her, their voices trembling as they recited the incantation. The dark energy in the room intensified, the funhouse shaking violently as the spell took hold. "No!" The ringmaster's voice boomed, his image flickering and fading in the mirrors. "You cannot defeat me!" With a final deafening roar, the funhouse imploded, the walls collapsing inward as the dark energy was released. The ghostly figures vanished, their screams silenced as they were freed from their torment. Emma, Sarah, and Mark found themselves standing in the ruins of the funhouse, the book still clutched in Emma's hands. The air was still and quiet, the oppressive presence of the ringmaster gone. "We did it," Emma said, her voice filled with relief. "We broke the curse." The old man stepped forward, his expression one of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "You have freed us all." As they emerged from the ruins of the funhouse, the fairground seemed to transform. The once ghostly atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. The spirits of the past had been laid to rest, and the fairground was finally free from its dark legacy. Emma, Sarah, and Mark stood together, their ordeal finally over. They knew that the fairground would always be a place of memories, both joyous and tragic. But they had faced the horrors of the past and emerged victorious, their courage and determination a testament to the power of hope and resilience. As they walked away from the fairground, the whispers faded into the distance, a haunting reminder of the trials they had overcome. The ghostly fairground was no more, its secrets uncovered, and its spirits finally at peace. With the cursed funhouse behind them, Emma, Sarah, and Mark felt a glimmer of hope, but they knew their journey was far from over. The fairground held more secrets, and the ghostly boy's plea for help still echoed in their minds. They made their way back to the Ferris wheel, its silent silhouette looming against the night sky. The old man who had guided them before was waiting at the base of the wheel. His expression was somber, his eyes reflecting the weight of the past. "There's one more place you need to go," he said, his voice low and grave. "The Ferris wheel holds the key to understanding what truly happened here." The Ferris wheel creaked and groaned as it came to life, the carriages swaying gently in the breeze. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine as they climbed into one of the carriages. The old man operated the controls, and the wheel began its slow, steady ascent. As they rose higher, the fairground spread out beneath them, a patchwork of lights and shadows. The air grew colder, and the sounds of the fairground faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Emma felt a sense of foreboding, as if they were crossing into another realm. The wheel reached its highest point and stopped, leaving them suspended high above the ground. The carriage swayed gently, and Emma felt a chill seep into her bones. She glanced at Sarah and Mark, their faces pale and tense. "Look," Mark said, pointing to the center of the wheel. In the hub of the Ferris wheel, they saw a ghostly figure, an old man dressed in a ringmaster's coat, his face twisted in anguish. The ringmaster from the mirrors, he seemed to be trapped within the wheel, his spectral form flickering and fading. Emma felt a surge of determination. "We need to speak to him. He has the answers we need." The old man nodded. "The Ferris wheel holds the memories of the past. It will show you what you need to see." As they watched, the scene around them began to change. The fairground below faded, replaced by a vivid vision of the past. The Ferris wheel was no longer a rusting relic, but a grand, gleaming attraction, filled with joyous laughter and the sounds of happy families. But as the wheel turned, the vision darkened. Flames erupted from the funhouse, spreading rapidly through the fairground, the air filled with smoke and screams of terror. Emma saw the boy again, his face twisted in fear as he was trapped by the fire. The ringmaster's ghostly form turned to them, his eyes filled with despair. "I made a terrible mistake," he said, his voice echoing with regret. "I wanted the fairground to be a place of wonder and joy, but I pushed too hard. I ignored the warnings, and the fire was the result." Emma's heart ached for the boy and the others who had perished. What can we do to help them? The ringmaster's form flickered, his expression one of profound sorrow. The spirits are trapped by their pain and my guilt. You must find the source of the fire and cleanse it. Only then can they be freed. The vision faded, and they were once again suspended high above the ground in the present-day Ferris wheel. The old man looked at them, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. The source of the fire is in the ringmaster's tent. It was never rebuilt after the tragedy, but the remnants are still there, hidden beneath the fairground. Emma nodded, her resolve firm. We need to find the tent and cleanse it. It's the only way to set the spirits free. As the Ferris wheel began its descent, the fairground seemed to come alive with an eerie energy. The ghosts of the past were stirring, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. Emma, Sarah, and Mark knew they were running out of time. They reached the ground, and the old man led them to a hidden path that wound through the fairground, taking them to the remnants of the ringmaster's tent. The path was overgrown and choked with weeds, but they pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose. At the end of the path, they found the remains of the tent, a charred, crumbling structure barely visible beneath the tangled undergrowth. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and decay, and the whispers of the spirits grew louder, more desperate. Emma approached the tent, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of the past pressing down on her, the anguish of the spirits trapped within. "This is it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We have to cleanse this place." Sarah and Mark stood beside her, their faces pale but determined. "How do we do it?" Sarah asked. The old man stepped forward holding a small vial filled with a shimmering liquid. "This is holy water, blessed by the old priest who used to live in the town. It has the power to cleanse the spirits and break the curse." Emma took the vial, feeling its cool weight in her hand. She stepped into the remnants of the tent, the air growing colder with each step. The whispers grew louder, the spirits swirling around her, their faces twisted in agony. She uncorked the vial and began to sprinkle the holy water around the tent, her voice steady as she recited a prayer for the dead. The air crackled with energy, the spirits crying out as the water touched the ground. As she continued, the ringmaster's ghostly form appeared before her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with a profound sense of relief. "You have freed us." The spirits began to fade, their anguished expressions softening into peaceful smiles. The air grew warmer, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the curse was broken. Emma stepped out of the tent, the vial empty in her hand. She felt a sense of peace and accomplishment, knowing they had done what they came to do. Sarah and Mark stood beside her, their faces filled with relief. The old man smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You have done a great thing. The spirits are free, and the fairground can finally rest." As they walked back through the fairground, the lights seemed brighter, the air filled with a sense of joy and celebration. The ghosts of the past were gone, their anguish replaced by a sense of peace. Emma knew they had faced unimaginable horrors, but they had emerged victorious. The ghostly fairground was no more, its secrets uncovered and its spirits finally at peace. And as they left the fairground behind, they knew they had made a difference, bringing light to a place that had long been shrouded in darkness. With the spirits freed and the Ferris wheel's curse lifted, a palpable sense of relief washed over Emma, Sarah, and Mark. The fairground, now eerily quiet, seemed almost peaceful. Yet, Emma felt a lingering sense of unease. The old man's words echoed in her mind. "The ringmaster's tent holds the key." They followed the old man through the fairground past the midway and towards the heart of the park. The cheerful colors and lights that had once adorned the attractions now appeared faded and ghostly under the moonlight. The whispers of the spirits had ceased, replaced by an oppressive silence. At last, they reached a secluded clearing. Hidden beneath the overgrowth and debris was a tattered, once grand tent. The remnants of the ringmaster's tent loomed before them, its fabric shredded and its structure crumbling. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and old smoke. "This is where it all began," the old man said, his voice somber. "The ringmaster's ambition and the Fairground's curse are intertwined. You must find the heart of his power and destroy it." Emma took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "We're ready." They stepped into the tent, the interior a stark contrast to its decaying exterior. The air was heavy, and the darkness seemed to press in on them. Emma held up her flashlight, casting long shadows that danced across the rotting wood and tattered fabric. In the center of the tent stood a large, ornate chest, its surface covered in intricate carvings. Emma felt a surge of apprehension as she approached it, her hand trembling as she reached for the lid. "Be careful," Sarah warned, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded and lifted the lid. Inside was a collection of old documents, photographs, and a large leather-bound book. She picked up the book, its cover embossed with strange symbols, and the name Ringmaster Tobias Gray etched in gold. "This must be his journal," Emma said, opening the book. The pages were filled with the ringmaster's meticulous handwriting, detailing the history of the fairground and the events leading up to the tragic fire. As they read through the journal, a dark story unfolded. Tobias Gray had been a charismatic and ambitious man, determined to create the most spectacular fairground the world had ever seen. He had made a pact with dark forces, promising to entertain and delight the masses in exchange for supernatural success. But as the fairground grew, so did his obsession. He pushed his performers and attractions beyond their limits, ignoring the warnings and the growing danger. The fire that had claimed so many lives was the result of his reckless ambition and the dark pact he had made. Emma's hands shook as she read the final entries. "He knew what was happening," she said, her voice trembling. "He tried to stop it, but it was too late. The spirits were bound to the fairground by his actions." "We need to destroy this book," Mark said, his eyes dark with determination. "It's the source of his power." The old man nodded. "There is a place, deep beneath the fairground, where the pact was made. You must take the book there and burn it. Only then will the curse be fully lifted." Emma closed the journal, her mind racing. "How do we get there?" The old man pointed to a trap door at the back of the tent. "Through there. Follow the path, and it will lead you to the heart of the fairground's darkness." They approached the trap door, its hinges rusty and creaking as they opened it. A cold, damp air wafted up from the darkness below. Emma felt a sense of foreboding, but she knew they had no choice. They descended into the darkness, the narrow staircase winding deep into the earth. The walls were damp and covered in strange, luminescent fungi that cast an eerie glow. The whispers of the spirits seemed to return, guiding them deeper into the heart of the fairground's curse. At the bottom of the staircase, they entered a cavernous chamber. In the center stood a stone altar, its surface blackened by ancient fires. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur and decay. "This is it," the old man said, his voice echoing in the cavern. "This is where the pact was made." Emma approached the altar, the journal clutched tightly in her hands. She felt the weight of the past pressing down on her, the anguish of the spirits and the ringmaster's regret. She placed the journal on the altar and took a deep breath. "Let's end this," she said, her voice steady. Mark handed her a box of matches, his eyes filled with determination. "Do it, Emma." She struck a match and held it to the journal. The flame caught quickly, spreading across the pages with an unnatural speed. The air around them seemed to tremble, and the whispers of the spirits grew louder, a chorus of relief and release. As the journal burned, the cavern shook, and a bright, blinding light filled the space. Emma shielded her eyes, feeling the dark energy dissipate. The ringmaster's curse was breaking, the spirits finally freed from their torment. When the light faded, the cavern was silent. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. The journal was nothing but ashes, the pact broken, and the Fairground's dark legacy ended. Emma, Sarah, and Mark made their way back to the surface, their hearts light with relief. The old man followed, his expression one of profound gratitude. "You have done a great thing," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "The spirits are free, and the Fairground can finally rest." As they emerged from the tent, the Fairground seemed to shimmer with a new light. The ghosts of the past had been laid to rest, and the Fairground was finally at peace. Emma felt a sense of accomplishment and closure, knowing they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The ghostly Fairground was no more, its secrets uncovered and its curse broken. And as they left the Fairground behind, they knew they had made a difference, bringing light to a place that had long been shrouded in darkness. The Fairground was eerily quiet as Emma, Sarah, and Mark emerged from the ringmaster's tent. The sense of peace that had settled over the grounds was palpable, yet there was an unshakable feeling that something remained unresolved. The old man, who had guided them through so much, lingered at the edge of the clearing, his expression still one of caution. "What now?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking the heavy silence. The old man stepped forward, his eyes reflecting a deep, lingering sadness. "There is one final ride," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The spirits may be freed, but the Fairground itself holds one last secret. The truth behind the boy's plea for help still lies hidden." Emma's heart sank. They had come so far, faced so much, but the Fairground's grip was not yet fully broken. "Where do we go?" she asked, her voice trembling. The old man pointed toward the Ferris wheel, now standing silently against the moonlit sky. "At the top, you'll find the final piece of the puzzle. It's a ride that will take you beyond the veil of the past and into the heart of the Fairground's deepest secret." Reluctantly, the trio made their way back to the Ferris wheel. The silence was oppressive, every creak of the metal and rustle of leaves amplified in the still night. They climbed into a carriage, the old man at the controls, and the wheel began its slow ascent. As they reached the apex, the wheel stopped, leaving them suspended high above the ground. The night was still, the Fairground spread out beneath them like a dark, twisted map. The air was thick with anticipation and an eerie calmness. Suddenly the carriage shuddered, and the world around them seemed to dissolve. Emma felt herself being pulled into a swirling vortex of light and shadow, her friends beside her as they were transported to another time and place. They found themselves standing in the middle of the Fairground, but it was no longer the deserted, haunted place they knew. Instead, it was vibrant and alive, bustling with people and filled with the joyous sounds of a summer evening. "Where are we?" Mark asked, his voice filled with wonder. "We've traveled back to the night of the accident," Emma replied, her heart pounding. "We need to find out what really happened." They moved through the crowd, the cheerful atmosphere a stark contrast to the horrors they had faced. Everywhere they looked, people were laughing, playing games, and enjoying the attractions. But beneath the surface, Emma could sense the tension, the unseen threads that would soon unravel into tragedy. As they approached the carousel, Emma saw the boy again, his face alight with excitement as he rode the black stallion. She felt a pang of sadness, knowing the joy would soon turn to terror. "Look over there," Sarah said, pointing to a man in a ringmaster's coat standing near the funhouse. His face was stern, his eyes scanning the fairground with a look of determination. "That's Tobias Gray," Mark whispered. "He doesn't look like a villain." Emma watched as Tobias approached the funhouse, his expression darkening. She realized he was trying to prevent the disaster, to stop the chain of events that would lead to the fire. But he was too late. A sudden scream pierced the air, and chaos erupted. Flames burst from the funhouse, spreading rapidly through the fairground. The joyous atmosphere turned to panic, people fleeing in all directions as the fire consumed everything in its path. Emma felt a surge of urgency. "We have to help them!" They rushed toward the funhouse, the heat of the flames intense against their skin. Emma spotted the boy trapped inside, his eyes wide with fear. She pushed through the crowd, desperate to reach him. "Over here!" she shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of the fire. She grabbed the boy's hand, pulling him to safety just as the structure collapsed behind them. The boy looked up at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You saved me." Emma hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You're safe now." As the flames died down and the vision began to fade, Emma realized the truth. The boy's spirit had been trapped, his plea for help a desperate cry for salvation. By saving him in the past, they had altered the course of events, breaking the final chain that bound the fairground. The world around them dissolved once more, and they found themselves back in the present, standing at the top of the Ferris wheel. The fairground was silent, but the oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and closure. They descended in the carriage, the old man waiting for them at the base. His eyes were filled with a mixture of relief and gratitude. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You freed the fairground." Emma, Sarah, and Mark embraced, their ordeal finally over. The fairground, once a place of darkness and despair, had been redeemed. The spirits were at peace, and the curse was broken. As they walked away from the Ferris wheel, the first light of dawn breaking on the horizon, Emma felt a sense of accomplishment and closure. They had faced the horrors of the past and emerged victorious, their courage and determination a testament to the power of hope and resilience. The ghostly fairground was no more, its secrets uncovered and its spirits finally at peace. And as they left the fairground behind, they knew they had made a difference, bringing light to a place that had long been shrouded in darkness. The fairground would remain a memory, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope. And as they walked into the dawn, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, unafraid of the shadows that lurked in the past.